Hello and welcome, chaotic people. This is the Long Rest Podcast. My name is Kyle, and these are my co-hosts, Jackson and Rob. Today we will be talking about the ingredients to a good story. Come sit with us. Jackson, what is your favorite ingredient to use in storytelling?
Thank you for bringing this in, Kyle. For those of you guys who are new listeners, I hope that you will enjoy your time around the campfire with us as we sit around and drink our ale. In regards to a story, I mean, there are so many elements, I think, that you can do well that are kind of hard to define, right? Tone, I think, is something people throw around a lot, but it's difficult to be consistent with. But I would say that's probably my favorite element, the thing I guess, bond to the strongest. When a story has a really consistent tone, regardless of what's going on with the characters, kind of a very consistent theme or series of themes, I would say that's my favorite. Now, the reason I kind of bring that up, I won't reveal my answer yet. I'll go last. But that specifically brings me to what I would consider an example of a story I think is expertly written, perfectly written. I mean, as soon as I say that, something jumps to my mind. But I'll actually key this one up to Rob.
Uh-oh.
Rob, outside of D&D and preferably after 1000 AD, what do you think is a story that is expertly written? Something that master classes, the art of storytelling.
A masterclass story.
Can't be the Odyssey or the Epic of Gilgamesh. I know those are probably...
I mean, I can just bring up all of the classics and whatnot, but since we've already established we're from Alabama, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably one of the premier epic stories from the U.S. in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And, it has everything.
Well, okay, so you say it has everything. What specifically sets it apart?
Well, let's see now. You have your hero, Atticus Finch. You have your narrator, Scout. You have your villains. Unfortunately, I forget the name of the particular man that was the villain and whatnot. And of course, you have your victim, and unfortunately, I forget his name right now too. But not only that, there's a sense of engagement with all of the characters. You could see yourself in every one of their places and positions, and the crime, the problem that they're all facing is of course one that's tormented American society for 150 years, actually quite longer than that. So it's relevant.
Okay, so what I'm hearing kind of from you is you enjoy not only the complete kind of, I don't know how to put it, but the complete set of dishes in terms of the characters, right? They set up a whole bunch of different positions for the characters to be it the victim, the villain, the hero, and they flesh those out well.
Yeah.
And the relevance. Is relevance part of the driver for you?
The moment you brought up the topic, because we don't really talk about the topics at a time, we kind of ad-lib them as we get here. The moment you brought up the topic and the cooking analogy and whatnot, I was like, okay. All along we've talked about how this podcast is by DMs for DMs so that we can create this community. And one of the things that I've tried to reinforce over and over again is we're not just talking about how to be a good DM, but how to make the DM fun for DMs.
Sure.
So when I talk about relevance of the story, it's almost like the spice at the end, that extra touch and whatnot. We're going to talk today about how to make a story that's engaging to the players, that hits all the right elements. But, here it's also got to be something that's dessert for you, the DM, right? So after you've told a good story with engaging characters, with an interesting storyline and all that, it's also got to have that je ne sais quoi that makes you happy too. So you got to do it all. Well, you don't have to do it all, but it's that last bit that I don't think the DMs have been granting themselves the permission to do. I got to have a good game for my players. I've got to have interesting monsters. I got to have a good battle. I've got to have great skill checks. What makes it interesting for you too? And so, I've mentioned this in some of the earlier podcasts. Sometimes, whatever's in my life that is kind of something I want to think deeply on, I'm going to be thinking deeply about my campaign. So if I've dealt with a very narcissistic ex, which I talked about before, then my lead character is going to have some very narcissistic tendencies or something like that. If I'm particularly vexed about a social problem and whatnot, I may do the Star Trek thing and pull that in. Again, not wanting to sacrifice a good story, but once I feel like I have a good story and I've got good characters, then this is the little flavoring on the top that makes it fun for me too.
Interesting. So I don't think I'd really thought of doing that, kind of using the campaign as a medium, maybe, for lack of a better term. So Kyle, I'll kick it over to you. I mean, if you've got examples of that, or just want to talk about what your favorite story is.
Well, so my examples of best storytelling, I have a few. I don't want to go over all three because I feel like that'd be too much time. Unless y'all want to hear it.
Pick one at random.
Click,
stories. Stories that tell themselves the way they want to be told rather than the way you expect.
Okay.
For example, I play video games. They're not quite obscure, but they're not well known either.
Sure.
One of them is What Remains of Edith Finch. Whole story is told to you by the character Edith Finch, and you are under the assumption you are playing as her throughout the game. Mm-hmm. It is revealed to you at the end she is dead, and this is her son reading her diary as he follows her footsteps through this story.
And you don't find that out till the end?
And you don't find that out to the end.
Nice.
And there's all sorts of things where the gameplay changes completely and the tone just switch. It tells itself the way it wants to be told.
Yeah.
Another example is Journey or Sword of the Sea, games where no words are ever spoken by any character, but you can tell what the story is by reading their actions.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Also, spoiler warning. We'll go ahead and roll that one out there for mostly To Kill a Mockingbird. But we can probably put a little banner in there. No, I think that's a super important element of storytelling. And that's, earlier I hit on there are these intangibles that I think are hard to really nail down and describe, but can execute a highly compelling story if you do it right. And something like having the story almost insist upon its own messaging, right? Have it tell its own secondary narrative within what's been written already. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, you have the story of this woman's life, but there's this secondary narrative of you're observing it through a loved one's eyes, right? Which gives it its own flavor, it gives it its own tone. There's a whole lot dispensed to the story from a very simple tweak. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that different than if the reader themselves was reading the diary, or rather the player in this instance. But I feel like it's those little nuances that often make stories more long-lasting.
Yeah. That
give kind of that classical push into something you won't forget.
Yeah. So let me add to that. We're talking about that little extra and whatnot. So, like we're saying, we're having our dessert first. I'm sure later on we'll get into, building the building blocks and whatnot. But it doesn't have to be just an interesting story twist. I was thinking of the original Knights of the Old Republic. Mm-hmm. The story twist was there was, a Jedi that had turned to the dark side, and you were trying to defeat his apprentice, and also trying to figure out why he went to the dark side. And about halfway through the game, you find out you're him. So now that's old enough that I imagine you guys are going to tell me you've never played it, and I
tried.
Oh my God!
I've seen it, but
what is wrong? Oh,
it crashed 7 times. In 1 hour.
Yeah, that's.
You
that's
were like
exactly
4
what
or
they do.
5 when I was playing that, and you were a little upset at me killing all the animals on screen. I had to stop playing around you. So
Kind of checks out.
Wasn't there at some point where you had to like fight a female Sith or something?
yes,
And I was
yes,
like,
and I fought a girl, and you went around and said, "Daddy killed a girl." Oh gosh, I remember that one too. But
Hello, 911.
oh my goodness! But fortunately, it was 1,000 years ago, so
Right, that's true.
the statute of limitations
Yeah, exactly.
have expired. But yeah, it could be a great social issue. It could be a really cool twist in the story. It could be a great monster or take on a monster, and you just can't wait to see how your players are going to respond to it. But something needs to be in there that you're looking forward to the players getting to and seeing how it plays out.
Yeah. That kind of takes me when I first wrote that question down. I was in the same boat as you, Kyle. I had like 5 or 6 different examples of things that I really bounced around in my head, and ultimately, just picking one at random. I think that something that can also drive a story very, very well is ambiguity. And I don't mean that in like you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the answer to these things are, but the patience to be able to withhold, right? I think that's kind of a difficult thing to do as a storyteller. I'll give like kind of a weirdly niche example. If anyone who's listening is into like online creepypasta kind of stuff, most of which is just horrible, right? Most of which is unforgivably terribly written. No offense if anyone in the audience has written some of those. 2-sentence horror, just...
Well, hold on. Anybody who's watching this podcast is a person of taste and refinement.
No, of course.
And any fanfic that they would have written would have been of the highest quality.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we're talking Andy Weir kind of stuff here.
Yeah, I don't think he knew. I don't think he meant fanfic in the new sense. Fanfic almost exclusively refers to inappropriate content.
no, not quite.
I'm so old.
It used to refer to mostly inappropriate content. Not so much anymore.
Well, what's it referred to now?
Literally anything written about a work that is not identical to the work before.
See, I'm still stuck on the old definition because, like, I don't count self-inserts as fan. People will be like, I wrote a self, I just won't even look at it. But then it'll be like, you try to watch My Hero Academia and you're like, you type it in the search bar and then you get bombarded and the next 20 results, you're like, my eyes! So you're trying to click on the link to see the show. You know what I'm talking about, Kyle.
I know exactly what you're talking about, unfortunately.
All right. So my example.
A certain rule of the internet that
You
we will
guys are-
not speak.
You guys are hanging out parts of the internet that I'm not apparently.
No.
so-
It's just, you'll see it now. Trust me. My story I'm bringing
your
up
recommended feed.
Yeah, I know.
called The Whistlers, I believe. It's kind of a niche example. And spoilers, if you want to go read it, please go read it. It's an excellent story, and it's free. The crux of the story is basically there's this group of people that are out in the wilderness. They're camping and they're adventurers and they're trying to discover these things called the Whistlers, right? There's all these local legends about them, but it's the equivalent of like Bigfoot. They're like, who cares? But they're interested, so they go out and they explore. It's in the Pacific Northwest. It's bitterly cold. It's pretty wet. So it's inhospitable for a good portion of the trip. And while they're out in the woods, they start to hear this whistling, right? And it's not like a classic creepy 1940s gangster whistling while he's walking down an alley towards you snapping. There's this kind of animalistic tone to it. It sounds like almost like a bird call, and it follows them and it kind of surrounds them and it sets this very tense tone in the story. And again, if you want to read it, please skip ahead or go read it now and then come back because I'm about to spoil a lot. But the way the story handles the Whistlers is excellent, in my opinion, because not only do you genuinely never see them throughout the entire length of the story, but it is their presence that brings out the monster in the characters, right? So the characters start becoming paranoid. They start distrusting each other. A huge element of the story is that the Whistlers have a psychological effect. So members of the party begin to like for example, there's a scene where one of the guys starts like whooping and hollering in the middle of the night, kind of like alerting them to their position, and he starts whistling, and they freak out and they don't know what to do, right? And you don't know if he's been like possessed or taken over or what's happening, and it plays really well with perspective. So you never see his perspective. You see a couple of the other characters and how they're trying to balance, what do we do with this? I mean, he's a loved one for some of the people on the trip. How do they handle it? And in the end, really all of the characters end up suffering for what they choose. If they make a wrong decision, they are paid back for it. And it's expertly done. I think it's tied very, very nicely. But the danger is not even really a twist, right? And that can be an excellent thing to do in a story. It's just this measured introduction by the author of there are stakes. I don't need to tell you what they are. I can show you how they affect the characters. Like, you don't have to see this grotesque 30-foot tall monster chasing them through the woods to know they're scared. I can show you that they're scared. I can show you the psychological downfall of this group.
Show, don't tell, always.
Precisely. And I think that, at least in D&D, that is one of my favorite things to bring in, right, in Measure. Maybe you don't know why this thing's here, right? You can reason. I'm not going to leave you all the breadcrumbs, though. I want you to think on it for the next 5-6 sessions. Maybe you don't really understand this guy's motivations quite yet. And, those are kind of simple examples. But I really do think ambiguity is your friend.
Yeah. Well, you brought up ambiguity at the beginning. It reminds me of Jaws. Now, Jaws was a movie that came out in the
This is
early
a classic
70s.
enough that I know about Jaws. We're good.
I just wanted to make sure, you 12-year-olds.
I've
You hear
heard
that,
of
Kyle?
it. I've heard of it.
Oh, God.
Never watched it.
You've never watched Jaws.
No.
All right. So Steven Spielberg, I assume you guys know who that is, struggled when he was making the movie because, you heard of him?
I
Just
don't
a
know
little
much
bit?
about him. I just know he's a very famous movie
I raised
creator.
him, and
I think he made, what did he do? I think he did Transformers.
He did E.T. I know you've watched that several times.
Didn't he
Okay,
also
yeah.
do Jurassic Park? You mentioned E.T.
Yes.
or Jurassic Park?
I know he's watched.
Jurassic
I know he's
Oh,
watched
yeah,
E.T.
that's true.
It was one of his favorites growing up. So, in any case,
He go home.
The Thing.
all right. So, in any case, Jaws, when he was making Jaws, the robot that they had built never worked right. So they actually didn't show the shark until the very last, scene in the film. And that worked. It's just like you were talking about. They weren't able to show the shark, so they just kept showing the results of the shark being around, and that ambiguity built that sense of unease, terror. We're afraid of what we don't know. So if you're running a game where you're really wanting to pull the people in, give them a little bit less clarity.
Yeah.
But that also means you have to give them more hints and whatnot. You can't just give them nothing, right? You got to give them stuff to pull them in, and stuff to go, what is that? What's going on? So, tease the crap out of them. So.
See, that's always been a problem for me, is that if I have ambiguity, I don't let it sit long enough. That's been my weakness as a storyteller.
Well, there's that urge for them to understand your world, right? So you kind of want to, and so but that's the thing. We're having fun. We're playing a game, right? So at the end of the game, you go, yeah, I could have teased them a little longer, or maybe I let that one go too long. So what? Next game, you do something different.
I do think as well, it's not every story benefits from it. It's not a universal solution. The same way that like ketchup isn't. It's pretty universal. It's good a lot of the time. There are a lot of foods I don't want ketchup in. Like a lot of soups wouldn't really benefit from some ketchup.
Chocolate cake.
Yeah,
Steak.
there you go.
Do not put ketchup on your steak. Wait,
I feel like ours
Do
were less
not put
controversial.
ketchup on your steak.
what?
Do not put ketchup on your steak.
But
You can't sit at the campfire with us if you put ketchup on your steak. Yeah,
unless
you
you
can.
have money.
Yeah, you can.
Bring your money.
We're
and
not
then you
turning
can-
anybody away here, but we might tease you a little bit.
There's this, I think there's this benefit to ambiguity that is kind of like you were mentioning. It's intrigue, it's interest. I've always heard in writing stories that you presume your audience is smarter than you're giving them credit for. that things that may not seem obvious to you when sitting on the other side of the table are easier to piece together than you might reckon. And I think, in my experience, that's generally true. In fact, if I ever switch up some things later on, which another great thing is being a DM, if you write a really long campaign later, a lot of times you can be like, I'm just going to retcon this a little bit. I've kind of done that and been called on it in ways I didn't expect, in implications.
Yeah.
Things that the players immediately thought of that I never put together that this would imply.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, I've seen my stories evolve. It's like, oh, yeah, I didn't put that together. That makes sense. Yeah, we're doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of giving the players, or even the listeners, the readers, whatever it is for your story, that credit, I feel like it opens you up to play around with where your shark is, right? You don't have to go dorsal fin, the shark erupts out of the water. Cool entrance scene. But you can just leave pieces of wreckage floating in the calm water. And the players can piece together. And I think that gives them, for lack of a better word, ownership.
Yeah. I was about to say the players tell part of are telling the story as well. So by leaving a little bit open, by not spelling everything out to the nth degree, you leave them room. Of course, you got to be careful. I love sandbox campaigns and whatnot, and for a certain, generally the more experienced players, they'll come in and they'll have an idea what they want to do, and some experienced players are actively looking to break what you've done, which are less fun than they think they are. But for,
it's fun for them.
Less for me. But the noobs, they're like, what am I supposed to do? It's like, it's your character. You can do whatever. You can dance a jig. You can, pick your nose. You can do whatever. But what am I supposed to do? And it's like, so
Supposed to is big.
So, you have to know your audience when you're figuring out how big the story rails need to be for them.
That brings an important point of level design, which is, again, I know I harp on video games, but that's something they do in video games. You have to design your world and your levels so that people have a general idea of what's next. It's really subtle sometimes, and I have never mastered it. I have a hard time figuring out how to lay out or describe the world in a way that the players go, yes, this is a clue to the next part. But if you can figure it out, it's a great way to help build a world and make everything a little more smooth.
I do want to come specifically to level design here in a minute. I could talk level design all day. I love the topic of how survival games work and sandbox games where you direct the players with requirements as opposed to boundaries. I think that's a super fun topic.